Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming back for another episode of Hudson County Review Live. I am your host, the reporter with the bolder shoulders, whose unwavering attitude and charisma has taken the Hudson political scene over, John R. Haitis. And today, we're joined with the Hoboken Council President, Ruben Ramos. Ruben, great to have you.
Thanks for having me, John. I appreciate it. Great intro.
Thank you. I try. But obviously, it's been an interesting week, and I think the most pressing issue on most Hoboken residents' mind is the Union Dry Dock, and this has been ongoing since, I think, probably before you were even involved in politics, right?
Yep.
And today, or this week, I meant, was some talk of NJ Transit acquiring the property, and then there was talk of New York Waterway staying in Hoboken, and, basically, it seemed to me like we're back at square one, but from your perspective, what was going on here?
Well, I think there's multiple outcomes that could possibly take place at this point in time. Obviously, New Jersey Transit has an obligation to deliver transportation services to Hoboken residents and the residents as a whole. We have 30,000 people that use the ferry service. So there's multiple outcomes that could happen in the near future. You have one where New York Waterway, which is an outcome that Hoboken doesn't want to see, is New York Waterway operating out of Hoboken on a long-term basis. Number two, working with New Jersey Transit, New York Waterway, and the governor's office, hopefully finding a long-term solution for them to go to Bayonne or another location where they can still operate their ferry services. And the third option, obviously, is Hoboken acquiring the property. But the worst-case scenario would be New York Waterway having sole control of the property with New Jersey Transit's threat of purchasing that property, which would never give us an opportunity to acquire the property and make that a park space. However, and if New York Waterway is successful and New Jersey Transit does threaten us, but we can't use eminent domain or acquire that property outright, where they're going to just say they need to operate there, we need to provide these services. New York Waterway, by the original statute for the whole design from Bayonne, the waterfront walkway from Bayonne all the way to George Washington Bridge, as of right, they have to create a walkway for us, and there's opportunities at the table to try and get some of that acreage to be for open space. But we have to be at the table for that to happen. So hopefully cooler heads will prevail. We'll have a long-term conversation where the goal ultimately for us is for them to operate someplace else. But if there is a long-term goal where they do stay in Hoboken, hopefully our residents have access to the waterfront. So there's multiple tools on the table. I think New Jersey Transit, what they were looking for is 6 months to do a study after Governor Murphy and the new executive director was put into place there. So a 6-month study to see where New York Waterway could go long term, see what the environmental impact will be at the Union Dry Dock site. But ultimately, we'll continue to work with all parties involved to try and get the best outcome for Hoboken residents.
All right. So there it is in a nutshell. But let me just the last week, let's just go over that. So on Saturday night, Kevin Corbett, the new executive director of NJ Transit, he sends that letter to Mayor Bhalla saying, we're going to have this meeting and we're going to take the property.
Correct.
The mayor appeared to be a little taken aback, and, he sent his letter. And then, he said, we'll rescind eminent domain, and then they rescheduled their meeting for Thursday. And eventually they came to the compromise where if the council voted to rescind eminent domain, that they would cancel their meeting.
Correct.
And that's where we're at, right?
That's where we're at currently, but I think in conversations leading up to that weekend's letter, or prior to us taking the action of potentially using condemnation at that site, it seems that there was a back chatter conversations where they were stating to the mayor's office, that we're looking for at a study for 6 months. So delay on those actions, and New York Warriors have to go somewhere. We have to deliver the service somewhere. So maybe temporarily we operate in Hoboken, but our long-term goal is to go to Bayonne. So maybe something got lost in translation between those two parties. The city council, we weren't in direct contact with New Jersey Transit representatives or representatives from the governor's office at all during that time period. The mayor was pretty much dealing with them by himself at that time. But then starting from Thursday evening, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and up until Wednesday night, they were in constant contact with council members and giving their side of the story, what was going on here, and to what they were telling Mayor Bhalla before it was going on there. So basically they're saying, you took that eminent domain action, you kind of tied our hands to do that. So basically they could have put a gun to our heads, almost not literally, but put a gun to our heads for us to take this action. They had babysitters there in the room that night, someone from the governor's office, someone from New York Waterway, someone from New Jersey Transit, to make sure we did that rescinding of the eminent domain process, and we did that. Hopefully cooler heads will prevail. We have a seat at the table still, and we'll work for a long-term solution for all parties.
So I guess the biggest issue, which is up for debate, I mean, there's a lot, like you just said, but arguably the biggest issue was New York Waterway has to leave their Weehawken facility by June 1st. So, that puts a lot of parties in a bind. Was that a surprise to you?
I mean, they were going to leave that property by June 1st. I think no, when they sold their property in 2002, I think everyone was aware that they would have to go somewhere. I don't think we were surprised where they wanted to end up. I guess we were a little more surprised that they were looking to purchase Union Dry Dock. And again, I think for 30 years, that's the ultimate goal for past administrations and Hoboken residents going back 30, 35 years was to have a contiguous walkway along our entire waterfront. And I think we've done a really good job, past administrations done a really good job going back from Cappiello to Vizzetti to Pasquale to Russo to Roberts to Zimmer finishing up a couple of areas there with the Hoboken Cove area. So we've been really successful. This is the last missing piece of that. But I think where the past administration dropped the ball was Union Dry Dock. Eventually, that operation wasn't going to be there forever, and we should have intervened in the last 8 years and talking with them. Hey, when you guys stop operating, give us right of first refusal at least to acquire that property. Especially when they looked at multiple tax appeals. They lowered their tax appeals, so they're rating at like $4 million at that time. $4.3 million is what their tax assessed was at. So maybe they had an opportunity to buy it for a much cheaper price from them in the past 8 years. But then New York Waterway steps in, and here we are today. So hopefully cooler heads prevail, like I said earlier, and we'll find a long-term solution for everyone.
Gotcha. All right, so let's move on.
And including one aspect, actually, when New York Waterway sold their land there, and they were looking to sell it to the Hudson County Improvement Authority when Mayor Roberts was mayor, and trying to get the city of Hoboken to take over their operations.
What year was that?
This was probably like 2004, 2005. Around that time, Councilman Soares and Councilwoman Marsh were on the council still, so that had to be around 2004, after they had sold the property. So they did reach out to try and find different alternatives to it, but also we turned it down. Hudson County Improvement Authority turned it down, but again, we're still in the situation we are in today. But they looked at opportunities to try and get out of the business essentially. But hopefully, Bayonne's looking to get a ferry service at their Montby line. Maybe they could take this service as well to entice New York Waterway to go over there.
It would seem like a natural fit. So we'll see what happens over in the peninsula.
So we'll continue to work to a positive outcome. Hopefully.
Got it. So, okay, on a different topic, another thing that has been at the forefront at these Hoboken Council meetings has been the Rent Control Board. Obviously, you're aware Mike Lenz, Cheryl Fallick, two long-standing members, and rent control advocates were on the board for 7-8 years.
Correct.
And Mayor Bhalla wanted to go in a different direction, appoint two new members. That was Heath Urban and Warren Hall. And ultimately, you guys passed a measure to change the way that the appointments are made. The mayor vetoed it, and then finally you guys went with Cheryl Fallick and Heath Urban on Wednesday, right? So why did you decide not to play for the override? Did you just feel like the compromise was fair and it was time to move on?
And ultimately, I mean, from the beginning, when we first passed the ordinance to change the configuration of how appointments were made to that rent control board, I openly said, hopefully the next council meeting, the Mayor Bhalla comes to his senses a little bit and he appoints Cheryl Fallick at least, or one of the members. So basically, he's extending an olive branch to the council meeting that's saying, hey, Cheryl Fallick is a good board member, Michael Lenz is a good board member as well. They deserve to be reappointed. There's a lot of intricacies that go along with being a rent control member that I'm not familiar with, but I'm familiar with the entire thing. But I think you don't want someone going in there that isn't involved in the minutia of what it takes, and having that experience going off the board for members that didn't have any experience coming onto the board. I think that would set that board back a little bit. So that's why we want to take the action we did to try and protect the Cheryl Fallick and Michael Lenz. But ultimately, I think it was a good compromise going forward, at least having one of those members there that does have the experience, that does have the know-how, that does have the public backing and support going forward. So it was a compromise worth reaching, not to go that route. But that's the route we wanted to take from the beginning. If you had appointed Cheryl Fallick from the beginning, we don't go through those tactics, but I don't regret going through those tactics. Ultimately, one of those members was appointed, who's a good serving member, a respected member of the community, especially a respected member of the rent control community. So we really wanted to, and the residents felt comfortable with it, knowing that their best interest at heart would be taken, and someone would go the extra mile for for them in Cheryl Fallick. Unfortunately, didn't work out for Michael Lenz at this time, but hopefully down the road there'll be other opportunities for him to serve in that capacity as well. But, we had to go through those tactics to get to this point. If we just accepted them from the beginning, we lose a good board member. And for people to say that politics where I play with this, Cheryl Fallick, I don't think has ever supported me personally when I've ran throughout the years. But you have to recognize quality of work that people produce within the community and within specific boards. And I recognize that about Cheryl Fallick and Michael Lenz, who hasn't supported me since 2001. You have to recognize that about people and everyone. While we disagree on certain things, we could agree on lots of things as well, which where we are for the most part. I think in having respect for one another and respect on issues and respect to express our opinions and not yell and have that bandy at each other, but then come up with common ground. And I think we were successful in doing that, but I do not regret the tactics we took to get this far. If we didn't take those tactics, Cheryl Fallick isn't a member of that board today.
Got it. Okay. Well, what do you think about supporters of Mayor Bhalla? Some of them have said, like you alluded to, that this was politics because those two individuals supported 6th Ward Councilwoman Giattino's mayoral run. What's your reaction to that?
Well, there was probably a little bit of that in there as well, but ultimately, you had two good-serving board members. And again, take it back to the experience factor. You're getting rid of two members that have a lot of experience that for a board that basically, we have residents of Hoboken, they'd be one step from homelessness almost. So I think you want to have people that understand the topics, that aren't learning on the ground, and that's why we put the alternate factor in there as well. So you can be an alternate, learn from what's happening on the board rather than just getting your feet thrown into the fire, so to speak. So that's why we wanted to try and protect those individuals that had the experience, that were good serving members on that board. So if they want to cry politics, but fortunately it worked out at the end where the outcome worked for everyone, where Heath Urban was appointed there and Cheryl Fallick was appointed there as well. So it is a good outcome for the board members and for residents of Hoboken at the end of the day. And that's what the ultimate goal was, but it's politics or no politics involved with it. We want to make sure that board still had that experience to serve the members of our community the best we can.
All right, so on the topic of politics, one that I think we both enjoy, let's go back to January. And I remember when you were sworn in as council president, you made a remark along the lines, if back in 2015, if anybody would have bet that I'd be the council president of the Vegas odds, it would have made a lot of money.
Yeah.
So,
including me.
Around when did you start to realize that you were going to be the guy for the job?
I don't think I ever realized I'd be the guy for the job. I think when I was first elected back to the council in 2015, Mayor Zimmer made a statement welcoming council members back, and she said, and she made comments that she has a 7-2 council now, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. So I was like, well, 7-2. There's 9 members of the council here. Why would you just automatically exclude 2 members of the council, whether they supported you or not? And I think within that time, Councilman Russo and I said, listen, we're going to work with every single member of the council, regardless if they support us or don't support us, because we want to try to move an agenda forward for the residents of Hoboken, not getting in the way, not cause political animosity, not have shouting matches at the council meetings. And I think in that year, the first year, I think we got away from a lot of that. There wasn't a lot of animosity in the room where they had to do work. Our committees were functioning. We have a lot of back channels where council members speak to each other behind the scenes, and I think that's a positive thing for members of our community, members of the council, to create this positive atmosphere for us to be. And we could disagree, but we'll still go out afterwards, or you still pick up the phone the next day and make that phone call, feel comfortable doing that. So I think within those 2 years, I think we worked well. I think me personally, and Councilman Russo and Councilman Fish, we all, Councilman Cunningham, Councilwoman Giattino, Mayor Bhalla, we reached out to each other behind the scenes and worked with each other to support one another. And we got rid of that banter. And yeah, there was a couple of disagreements there, but there were no shouting matches. So I think that the tone of the overall council changed, where 2 years later, they recognized that, hey, I'm not here to just throw bombs into a room. I'm not here to disrupt government. I'm not here to disrupt what could be positive outcomes for members of our community, because I'm here to try and get things done, facilitate things, not just for my ward, but the entire city. So I think at the end of the day, I think they've recognized that comes from experience being the assembly member. So when I said there's an opportunity here that maybe I could try and calm the waters a little bit. I know we just came through a contentious election with Councilman DeFusco, Mayor Bhalla, so I think maybe I have the temperament to try and bring people together and ultimately work with Mayor Bhalla, work with these 9 council members and try and bring a positive issues forward for the residents of Hoboken, positive outcomes at the meetings themselves, and the tone of the meetings themselves being a lot calmer. And you see we have 8-1 votes, 9-0 votes, majority of the time in our agendas. There's a couple issues here and there we debate, like the rent control issue, you alluded to, the runoff issue that we voted on early in January was vetoed, and we did that override, and quite frankly, the mayor's second job. Other than that, you go to a council meeting, you think that where everyone was, we lived in Pollyanna. Because we do get along, and while we all see things the same way, maybe there's different processes we see to get to those solutions. But I think ultimately we'll try and get to those and work through it. It's not personal for me. I don't take it personal when someone disagrees with me. I don't take it personal, and hopefully someone doesn't take it personal when I disagree with them, because it's not. I just want to see a positive outcome for everyone, and I'm not going to be quiet about it either. So I'm going to voice my opinion. That's what we're there for, and we're there for a short period of time. And I'm real cognizant of that these terms aren't forever. So while I'm there, I'm going to speak up and speak my mind, but ultimately I want to see things accomplished, so I could say at least that time was worthwhile and I served my residents well.
All right. And you mentioned that Mayor Zimmer said at one point, we got the 7-2 council, and, a lot of people are always doing, quote unquote, counting the votes. So, in the beginning, people were saying this particular council was 7-2, and then they were saying it's 6-3. Now some are saying it's 5-4. How do you see it?
I see it as 0-0. I think it's our job for whatever we're looking to advocate for. It's our job to try and get those votes, to get the 5 votes, get the 6 votes, to get the majority of the votes, and to take to get what you want passed. And that's the way it works. In prior. That's the way it works in the state legislature, the way state government functions. I don't think anyone should be counted as a slam dunk vote, whether they're an ally of yours or not an ally of yours, because there's some levels of discomfort they may have with the issue. And you work with that person behind the scenes. You come to an agreement and say, maybe, down the road I'll help you out with something else if you can help me out with this vote here. And I may be uncomfortable with those things. But I think that's where it should all be. Every vote should start with 0-0. And you try and get your 5 from there. And then if you need 6 or 7 or 8 and 9, bring everyone along the board with you. So I would say it's a 0-0 council, and as we move things forward, we'll see where the votes are. It's our job. It's my job. If there's an issue I want to push out there, to talk to people to get those 5 votes, those 6 votes needed to do it. And it's every council member's job to do that. And it's the mayor's job, if he has an issue that he wants to pass, to talk to all 9 council members, move those policies along in a positive way. So I think it's a 0-0 council. That's the way I look at it, quite frankly.
All right, fair enough. Now, obviously, a hot topic that you just mentioned as well was the runoff elections in November. It looks like the voters will have a chance to decide again. Why did you think it was a positive thing to have them do that?
Well, I think if you go back after the issue happened with former Mayor Camerano, we had a special election that November. Mayor Zimmer was first elected with less than 50% of the vote at that time, but she was elected with the low 40s, I believe, at that time, maybe like high 30s. And so, you scratch your head, it was a special election, you get it. Then later on, they change, they put it on the ballot again. There was a mayor's initiative to do that. Her supporter decided to do that, to move the elections from May to November, which I was against from the beginning. I believe that Hoboken's election should be in May, because I think the issues that we face are important enough to Hoboken residents to stand alone, to be debated on by themselves. If you look at this past November, a lot of national politics came into play. If you look at a previous election in Hoboken, it was always nonpartisan, and it was we're debating what's my tax levy, how are my taxes being affected, are my roads being paved, are the parks maintained properly, are we moving a positive agenda forward, are we moving forward with the waterfront, how's development going in town? And now we're getting into Republican Democrat issues at a local level. I think we've always avoided that in the past. So I think a combination of seeing that, a combination of now having a third election, of a mayor having less than 50% of the vote, a combination of going out to the public and knocking on doors and speaking to members of the public and saying, hey, this is, they were okay with it the first time, they're okay with the second time. Now it's like, okay, now that percentage is now at 32% now. Who knows, maybe 4 years from now, the number comes to like 26% now. So it's like, we're the only municipality in the state of New Jersey that has a mayor elected with less than 50% of the vote. And I think the public recognizes that. I think as us, as elected officials, needed to recognize that as well and try and take the proper action, but not just ourselves as a body, but again, put it back in the hands of the public, because those are the doors we were knocking on, those are people who reach out to us, and they're recognizing that something's a little amiss here with the system, and try and get ourselves to the table, and maybe not have the election, again, brought back on Hoboken issues as opposed to Republican Democratic issues as we saw this past election, because I believe our issues are important enough to stand alone.
Now, the council majority, of course, including yourself, obviously approved this thing, but when Mayor Bhalla vetoed, he cited quote-unquote massive vote buying.
Yeah, that was almost like, that was very Trump-esque of him, when he cited like millions of people voted illegally throughout the country without citing evidence. I mean, no one's been... I think the only person's ever had to vacate their office based on some discrepancies with vote by mails, what have you, was Councilwoman Zimmer. She had to vacate her seat there. So if he wants to point to that as an issue, I know people always bring it up in every single election. I know me personally, I've never been involved in such things. I mean, you go back to my first election in 1999, where I had vote by mails impounded because they were being illegally obtained, and people breaking into mailboxes, quite frankly, and just straight up stealing ballots. So I don't know what the discrepancies are with this election, but obviously someone's vote is extremely sacred. We want the integrity of every single person's vote to be counted, to be protected. So whatever ensures that, hopefully the county official board of elections, that they look into those issues. If there has to go to an investigation, hopefully investigations get conducted. I know they have been in the past, but no findings. Maybe there's one that's going to happen in the future that maybe have some findings differently. But I know for myself personally that I've never been involved with activities that could even go close to those types of things. So I continue to try and reach out to members of the public to try and earn their vote, earn their support as much as possible. But I think ultimately that we'll see where that ends up. But I was almost borderline insulting with his citing of that, as opposed to citing that we're the only municipality in the state of New Jersey that has a mayor elected with less than 50% of the vote. And I think that's a problem.
Understood. Now, another thing that you've been talking about is Mayor Bhalla's new law firm gig, and I know that at least 2 weeks ago, I don't know about this week, because obviously Mark over here covered this week, but I was going to say, you brought up that there's a new resolution on the books, or ordinance, I guess it probably is, that the Hoboken Fire Department is only allowed to have one job, and you said this was a direct parallel to what's happening at the mayor's office, correct?
Yeah, if you look at, it was 2 proposed fire contracts for 2 individuals that could become the fire chief, and in their language, one had it very specific that they had to that they could have no job, no second job at all, and the second individual said they couldn't have a second job either, but if they did pursue a second job, they had to get permission for that second job, but with the understanding that it was probably going to be denied, and it went into more details as to why, with conflicts of interest and all types of other things. So I thought that was a direct parallel. I said, well, this is what we're trying to put in our fire chief's contract, and to look out for conflicts on putting out fires, let alone on this other end, we're working for a law firm where we approve millions of dollars of legal contracts every single year, and who knows the complexities that get into that, and the weeds, the muddy waters, which, for lack of a better term, that could lead to, where we're not aware of everything that's going on here. What dealings this law firm has with people that are doing work for the city of Hoboken at the time, potentially doing work for the city of Hoboken. So we don't know what's happening there. So it's a huge gray area that I like to see cleaned up. And even a step further, it's also in the city of Hoboken's best practices, where any director should not have a second job. If they do look for a second job, there's a process in which they have to go through, cited by Human Resources. So I asked that question for this council meeting: what's the process here? And if you look, I think the Corporation Council gave me a response that he's not sure that the mayor falls into directorship, where he's an elected official. But if you look at our city code and the Faulkner Act, once again, the mayor does fall in director. It's on page 1. The mayor does fall as directorship. He actually is the public safety director, since we don't have one. If we appoint the public safety director, we do not have one. And in light of that non-appointment, the mayor is the de facto public safety director. And so that's pretty clear. I remember going through that experience with Mayor Roberts, where he butted heads with the fire chief at the time and the police chief at the time, not all the time, but on occasion. And we would say, hey, you're the public safety director. That's what the legal counsel that would advise him and said, look at it, it's right there, clear as day. And so he saw fit to hire a public safety director, which was Bill Bergen, a retired fire captain at the time. So I'm pretty aware how that stuff went down there. And so here we are today, where we have, and again, the city's best practices says it should not be done, or if if it's going to be done as a process of how it should be done, we don't know what that process is, or if it's been set up. We have contracts that were proposed to two proposed fire chiefs that said they shouldn't have a second job, but here we have a mayor that has a $60,000 second job with potential of a lot more income with referrals, which we don't know where the referrals are coming from. So I think it's the public's best interest to try and shed light into that. And if the mayor wants to continue to have that path, that's up to him. But I know that people are coming up to me and saying that it's not a very positive look for the mayor, specifically when he said during the campaign, I will leave my law firm. My only job will be being mayor of the city of Hoboken, and less than a month in, here you have a job with a second firm. So he could say, oh yeah, I left that law firm, but you went to work at this one. It's almost like a three Condomani deal going on there. So I think residents are scratching their heads about it. Residents are talking about it, whether they come to the microphone or not. They are reaching out. When they walk down the street, they are mentioning it. So I'm sure other members as well, the council, are also being talked about. It's being mentioned. So people do have a level of discomfort there. If you look back, no other mayor since I've been alive, I think the first mayor I've been alive that I recall is Capiello, until the most recent Mayor Zimmer. No one outside of Mayor Bhalla has had a second job.
So earlier this year on this topic, obviously you're quite familiar that the council put out 26 questions for the mayor
Correct.
regarding this particular situation, and he responded. And is this matter closed as far as you're concerned?
No, listen, we're gonna continue to bring it out. I don't think it's closed at all. If you look at one of the questions there, I believe question number 5, if I recall correctly, specifically asked how much time will you allocate to your new position, and the response was, I will allocate no time be allocated to this job. And so basically, if you look at it in a nutshell, look at his comments. Look at he's making $60,000. I'm allocating no time to this unless he's like way ahead of time with technology, has mental telepathy to communicate with members of that law firm. He's making $60,000 to do absolutely nothing. That's the definition of a no-show job. In my eyes, I'm sure a lot of other people's eyes as well. So at least say, I have a conference call once a week for 10 minutes. But for you to put in writing that I allocate no time to this job whatsoever, and yet get $60,000, what did I put my resume for that? What's going on here?
So you found that insulting?
Yeah, it is borderline insulting, not just to myself, but to members of the public as well. So unless he wants to say, okay, I'm allocating some time to that, but I think, members of the public, members of the council do have some level of discomfort there, because we are approving not just like $100,000 a year in contracts, but legal contracts, millions of dollars a year in legal contracts going through. So we don't know what the relationships are with that law firm and the law firms that we're hiring. That I think, and a light has to be shed on that. Whether the mayor's not happy with me bringing it up or is happy, I think, but it'd be almost like nefarious on our part just to dig our head in the sand and not to talk about it. It's a conversation that needs to be had, because we have millions of dollars that are at stake here. And a lot less people went to jail for lesser crimes as well. If there is anything here. But let's say a firm is doing work with it, then what do we do? But at least we're asking the questions to say, Council President Ramos, when did you know this? When did you know that? Well, I've been asking this the entire time. If something does come up, that we're doing our best to try and shed a light on this issue.
Okay, so let's talk about the Hoboken Democratic Committee. So, as you're aware, Councilwoman Fisher is currently the chair of that committee. The executive committee says they're not satisfied with the direction that the agency is moving in, so they want a replacement. What's your take on this whole situation?
Well, I think obviously we talk about politics. A lot of the executive board members are Mayor Bhalla supporters. Councilwoman Fisher did not support Mayor Bhalla's efforts, so a lot of this probably has to do. Let's face it, a lot of it does have to do with that level of support. I think the members are saying that she supported Councilwoman Giattino in her mayor efforts, and she was a Republican. But let's look at the flip side of that. Councilwoman Fisher, because of her efforts of lobbying Councilwoman Giattino, she became a Republican. She became a Democrat at the time. So let's look at that. One of our only elected officials that was a Republican in town, our Democratic chair was successful in converting her from a Republican to a Democrat. So I think that could be a feather in Councilwoman Fisher's cap, as opposed to a negative going the other direction, where she expanded and grew our party and bringing more Republicans over to becoming Democrats. So at the end of the day, it's politics sometimes is, like you said earlier, is involved in certain instances of what we do in government, but obviously this was just a clear political maneuver, and we'll see where it ends up on Monday, if it happens or not. But according to the bylaws, the Democratic Party itself, while members want to be, I'm a lifelong Democrat, I'm a true blue blood Democrats in my very being, my fiber, and to all the Democratic principles from my grandparents to my parents to myself, just instilled greatly in me. So I've always been a Democrat, but with the way the bylaws are, with the Democratic committee, is really not much bite behind it. It's not much to it as far as what actions they could do as far as getting involved in other areas. So it's really, at the end of the day, it's really a wash. I'd like to see Councilwoman Fisher remain there, but the ultimate outcome is, I know for her, she's Democrat to her core as well. She's going to remain true to Democratic principles, and she's going to do her best as she can, whether she's chairman of that committee or not, to move those Democratic principles to Hoboken, where we're all benefiting from that. And I think one benefited from it already was making Councilwoman Giattino, or advocating, lobbying her to go from being a Republican to a Democrat, which is a big plus for all of us.
Okay. Now, speaking of Democrats and Democratic parties, as you know, the Hudson County Democratic Organization will be installing a new chair in June.
Yeah.
State Senator and Union City Mayor Brian Stack has been in Hoboken and across the county saying that he would like to fill that seat. What's your take on that?
Well, again, obviously, I hope cooler heads prevail there. Ultimately, for my part as a Democrat, looking at the Democratic landscape in the county, in the state, throughout the country, I think our priority as Democrats should be advocating for Democratic principles and basically and fighting for what we believe in, and oppose our Republican agenda that President Trump is putting out there for us, which is extremely detrimental to a lot of our residents in Hudson County, a lot of the policies that we believe in Hudson County, whether it's the getting rid of the SALT deductions for our residents with the interest deduction, which is with the mortgage deduction for us, which is extreme harm to New Jersey's economy and to homeowners throughout the state, whether it's DACA. And we have an extreme number of Hudson County residents who fall under the DACA status, those dreamers who want to become, who are living here as citizens, who only know the United States as a country, who want to become citizens permanently, to find that path for them, whether it's our transportation infrastructure with the Gateway Tunnel, which Hoboken, Hudson County benefits from, whether it's women's rights, whether it's gun rights, all things that whether it's fighting against a border wall that takes money away from that Mexico is supposed to pay for in the first place. As Democrats, I like to see our party come around these issues, coalesce around our United States Senator. Senator Menendez does a fantastic job representing the state of New Jersey, coalescing around Congressman Sears, as both of those gentlemen engage in those battles to make sure that we have a seat at the table to fight that fight. And so I think this only takes away from that. So why we want to harm the most organized Democratic organization sometimes, but when it can be at its best in the country, that's a kind of Democratic organization. We can deliver a large number of votes to a fight that probably is a little unnecessary, and a lot of people deem throughout the county, including myself. So hopefully cooler heads prevail in that fight going forward. But County Executive DeGise is our current county executive, so I'm going to support him in his re-election bid. I could tell you that right now. Even though Hudson County, our taxes in Hoboken are not where we want them to be. They're a little high. Hopefully we get better services. But I think County Executive DeGise has always conducted himself as a gentleman to myself personally. And again, he has supported me a lot in my elections as well. But whenever I pick up the phone to call him up, he's always answering my calls. He didn't just that's Ruben Ramos and hang up the phone on him. He always took my calls and whatever questions I had for him, whatever advocacy he could do, issues that my residents had, he always picked up the phone. And sometimes he would say, we can't do that right now, but that's, as elected officials, that's all you could expect. Whether a constituent calls me up and I tell them, they just want us to do the best we can and know that we put a good effort in, and sometimes the outcomes aren't where they want it to be, but they accept those answers as long as they know we put a good effort in. So I appreciate Tom DeGise's efforts to those parts of myself personally.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to end on a high note. In case you missed it, Hoboken Council President Ruben Ramos is backing Hudson County Executive Tom DeGise for re-election. We talked about a whole lot more. Ruben, it was a pleasure having you.
We got no sports in here, though.
Politics is the best smash mouth sport.
We didn't talk Rutgers football, Devils hockey, baseball's back. There's a lot of things we missed.
Devils are looking good. Rutgers football is still not so much.
No, we're on the rise, though. We're on the rise. Coach Ash, hope you watch. We're on the rise.
Well, it's hard to be not on the rise when you were as bad as they were.
Oh, come on, man.
But anyway, thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Ruben, thanks again.
I appreciate you having me.
All right, everyone, have a fantastic weekend.
Thank you.